LucasArts is an American licensor. The company was founded on May 1st, 1982 by George Lucas. But in 2013, the total number of employees was 10. So, could this be game over for LucasArts? Let's find out. Early history. In 1979, George Lucas wanted to explore other areas of entertainment and created Lucasfilm Computer Division in 1979, which included a department for computer games, the Games Group, and another for graphics. The graphics department was spun off into its own corporation in 1982, ultimately becoming Pixar. The Lucasfilm Games Group originally cooperated with Atari, which helped fund the video game group's founding to produce video games. Though the group had spun out of Lucasfilm, the video game development license for Lucasfilm's Star Wars were held by Atari at the time, forcing the group to start with the original concept. Ron Gilbert, one of the group's first employees, believed that if the Lucasfilm Game Group had the rights for the Star Wars from the start, they would have never branched into any new intellectual property. The first products from the Games Group were unique action games like Ball Blazer in 1984 and Rescue on Fractalus. Beta versions of both games were leaked to pirate bulletin boards exactly 1 week after Atari had received unprotected copies for a marketing review and were in wide circulation months before the original release date. In 1984, they were released for the Atari 5200 under the Lucasfilm Games label. Versions for home computers were not released until 1985 by publisher Ipsks. Lucasfilm's next two games were Chronos Rift and the Ideon. The first games were only developed by Lucasfilm, and a publisher would distribute the games. Atari published their games for Atari systems. Activision and Epix would do their computer publishing. Maniac Mansion was the first game to be published and developed by Lucasfilm Games. The early character of Lucasfilm Games was to make experimental, innovative, and technological advanced video games. Habitat, an early online role-playing game and one of the first to support graphical front-end, was one such title. It was only released as a beta test in 1986 by Quantum Link, an online service for the Commodore 64. Quantum Link could not provide bandwidth at the time to support the game, so the full Habitat was never released outside of the beta test. However, Lucasfilm Games recouped the cost of the development by releasing a sized-down version called Club Carby in 1988. Lucasfilm later licensed the software to Fujitsu, who released it in Japan as Fujitsu Habitat in 1990. Fujitsu later licensed Habitat for worldwide distribution and released an updated version called Worlds Away in 1995. The latest iteration of Habitat is still called Worlds Away, which can be found at Metro Worlds. Initially, the Games Group worked from Lucas Skywalker Ranch near Nicasio, California. In 1990, in a reorganization of the Lucas companies, the game division of Lucasfilm became part of the newly created LucasArts Entertainment Company, which also comprised Industrial Light and Magic and Skywalker Sound. Later, ILM and Skywalker Sound were consolidated in Lucas Digital Limited, and LucasArts became the official name of the former games division. During this, the division had moved out of Skywalker Ranch to nearby offices in San Rafael, California. Also in 1990, LucasArts started to publish The Adventurer, their own gaming magazine where one could read about their upcoming games and interviews with the developers. The final issue was published in 1996. In the same year, Lucas Learning was curated as a subsidiary of LucasArts, providing educational software for classrooms. iMuse Interactive Music Streaming Engine is an interactive music system used by a number of LucasArts video games. It synchronizes music with visual action in the game and transitions from one musical theme to another. iMuse was developed in the early 1990s by composers Michael Land and Peter McConnell while working at LucasArts. The iMuse system is patented by LucasArts and was added to the SCU game engine in 1991. The first game to use iMuse was Monkey Island 2: LeChuck's Revenge, and it has been used in all LucasArts adventure games since. It has also been used for some non-adventure LucasArts titles, including Star Wars X-Wing, DOS version, Star Wars TIE Fighter, DOS version, and Star Wars Dark Forces adventure games. The first adventure game developed by Lucasfilm Games was Labyrinth in 1986, based on the Lucas movie of the same name. The 1987 title Maniac Mansion introduced SCU-MM, the scripting language behind most of the company's later adventure offerings. The adventures released in the following years, such as Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders in 1988, Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, the graphic adventure in 1989, and the 1990 titles Loom, The Secret of Monkey Island, helped Lucasfilm Games build a reputation as one of the leading developers in the genre. The original 5 adventure games created with SCU-MM was released in a compilation titled LucasArts Classic Adventures in 1992. LucasArts was often referred to one of the 2 big names in the field, competing with Sierra Online as a developer of high-quality adventures. The first half of the 1990s was heyday for the company's adventure fame, with classic titles such as Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge in 1991, Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis in 1992, Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle, and Sam & Max Hit the Road in 1993, and 1995 titles Full Throttle and The Dig. In the latter half of the decade, the popularity of adventure games faded and the costs associated with game development increased as a high-resolution art and CD quality audio became standard fare. The PC market wanted titles that would show off expensive new graphics cards to best effect, and a change replicated in the home console market as the 3D capabilities of the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and Nintendo 64 dedicated the nature of the majority of the games produced for those platforms. The adventure genre failed to find popularity with the masses of new gamers. Despite their declining popularity, LucasArts continued to release adventure titles. In 1997, The Curse of Monkey Island, the last LucasArts adventure game to retain traditional two-dimensional graphics and point-and-click interface, was released. This was followed by Grim Fandango in 1998, LucasArts' first attempt to convert a 2D adventure into a 3D environment. The highly stylized visuals, outstanding soundtrack, superb voice acting, and sophisticated writing earned Grim Fandango many plaudits, including GameSpot's Game of the Year award. Escape from Monkey Island 2000, the 4th installment of the Monkey Island series, featured the same control scheme as Grim Fandango and was generally received. It was the last original adventure game the company has released. 2 sequels to existing franchises, Full Throttle, Blank on Wheels, and Sam and Max Freelance Police were announced to be in development, but these projects were cancelled in 2003 and 2004 respectively before the games were finished. When the rights to the Sam and Max franchise expired in 2005, the creator of Sam and Max, Steve Purcell, regained ownership. He then licensed Sam and Max to Telltale Games to be developed into an episodic game. Telltale Games is made up primarily of LucasArts employees who had worked on the Sam and Max sequel and were let go after the project was cancelled. LucasArts halted adventure game development for the next 5 years, focusing instead on their Star Wars games. They remained silent and did not re-release their old games on digital distribution platforms as other studios were doing at the same time. At the time. However, in 2002, the company pledged that at least 50% of its releases would have nothing to do with Star Wars. It was not until 2009 that they returned to the genre. On June 1st, 2009, LucasArts announced both The Secret of Monkey Island Special Edition, a high-definition remake of the original game with revised graphics, music, and voice work, and Tales of Monkey Island, a new episodic installment in the Monkey Island series that was developed by Telltale Games. Then, on July 6, 2009, they announced that they would be releasing a number of their classic games, including Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis and Loom on Steam. The re-release were, for the first time, native versions built for Microsoft Windows. This was the first time in many years that the studio had offered any support for its classic adventure titles. The second game in the Monkey Island series also received a high-definition remake entitled Monkey Island 2: LeChuck's Revenge Special Edition in 2010. Both Monkey Island Special Edition games were released in a compilation Monkey Island Special Edition collection exclusively in Europe 2011. The release of the unofficial SCU-MM Virtual Machine SCU-MM-VM has led to something of its resurgence for LucasArts adventure games among the present-day gamers. Using SCU-MM-VM, legacy adventure titles can easily be run on modern computers and even more unusual platforms such as video game consoles, mobile phones, and PDAs. Simulation games. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Lucasfilm Games developed a series of military vehicle simulation games, the first of which were the Naval Simulations PHM Pegasus in 1986 and Strike Fleet in 1987. These two titles were published by Electronic Arts for a variety of computer platforms, including PC, Commodore 64, and Apple II. In 1988, Battlehawks 1942 launched a trilogy of World War II air combat simulations, giving the player a chance to fly as an American or Japanese pilot in the Pacific Theater. Battlehawks 1942 was followed by their finest hour, the Battle of Britain in 1989, recreating the battle between the Luftwaffe and RAF for Britain's air supremacy. The trilogy ended with Secret Weapons for the Luftwaffe in 1991, in which the player could choose to fly on either the American or German side. The trilogy was lauded for its historical accuracy and detailed supplementary material. Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe, for instance, was accompanied by a 224-page historical manual. The World War II trilogy was released with cover art by illustrator Mark Erickson in a compilation titled Air Combat Classics in 1994. The World War II trilogy was curated by a team led by Lawrence Hollid, a game designer who later founded Totally Games. Totally Games would continue to develop games almost exclusively to LucasArts for a decade, with the most noted outcome of the symbiosis being the X-Wing series. They were also responsible for LucasArts' 2003 return to the aerial battles of World War II with Secret Weapons over Normandy, a title released on PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC. In 1996, LucasArts released Afterlife, a simulator in which players build their own heaven and blank, with several jokes and puns, such as a prison in blank called San Quentin Tarantino. First Star Wars games. Even though LucasArts curated games based on other Lucasfilm properties before Labyrinth and Indiana Jones, they did not use the Star Wars license until the early 1990s. Star Wars games began appearing in the 1980s but were developed by other companies for LucasArts because the license for the games had been sold before LucasArts was formed. The first in-house development of the space combat simulator X-Wing, developed by Larry Holland's independent team, which went on to spawn a successful series. The CD-ROM only Star Wars game Rebel Assault became one of the biggest successes of the company and was considered a killer app for CD-ROM drives in the early 1990s. First-person shooters. After the unprecedented success of ID Software's Doom, the PC gaming market shifted towards production of three-dimensional first-person shooters. LucasArts contributed to this trend with the 1995 release of Star Wars Dark Forces, a first-person shooter that successfully transplanted the Doom formula to a Star Wars setting. The Dark Forces strategy guide claims that development was well underway before Doom was released, and the game was pushed back once Doom hit shelves so that it could be polished. The game was well received and spawned a new franchise, the Jedi Knight games. This began with the sequel Dark Forces Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2, released in 1997. This game reflected the changing face of PC gaming, being one of the first games to appreciably benefit when used in conjunction with a dedicated 3D graphics card like the 3DFX's Voodoo range. The game received an expansion pack, Mysteries of the Sith, in 1998, a full sequel in 2002 with Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. 2003 Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy can be seen as a spin-off from the series but was less well received by reviewers, who complained that the franchise was becoming formulaic. Apart from Star Wars-themed 3D shooters, LucasArts also curated the Western-themed game Outlaws in 1997, and Armed and Dangerous in collaboration with Planet Moon Studios in 2003. In the new millennium. In 2000, Simon Jeffrey became the LucasArts president. He was president of LucasArts until 2003, and some successful Star Wars games released during his management, like Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, the Jedi Outcast, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2, Knights of the Old Republic, Star Wars Jedi Academy, and Star Wars Galaxies. Development of some other successful Star Wars games began during his management, like Star Wars Republic Commando and Star Wars Battlefront. In 2002, LucasArts recognized that the over-reliance on Star Wars was reducing the quality of its output and announced that the future releases would be at least 50% non-Star Wars related. However, many of the original titles were either unsuccessful or even cancelled before release, and since then, LucasArts again had mainly Star Wars titles in their production. Also in 2002, LucasArts released a compilation CD filled with music from their past games. The album is titled Best of LucasArts Original Soundtracks and features music from the Monkey Island series, Grim Fandango, Outlaws, and The Dig. 2003 saw the fruitful collaboration of LucasArts and BioWare on the well-reviewed role-playing game Knights of the Old Republic. Combining modern 3D graphics with high-quality storytelling as sophisticated role-playing games system, this game reinvigorated the Star Wars franchise. Its 2004 sequel, Knights of the Old Republic, The Sith Lords, continued in the same vein, but LucasArts was criticized for forcing the developer Obsidian Entertainment to release the sequel unfinished, resulting in a significant amount of cut content, a disappointing ending, and numerous bugs. In 2003, LucasArts and the Star Wars franchise was also branched out in a new direction, the world of MMORPG, with curation of Star Wars Galaxies. After a successful launch, the first expansion, Jump to Lightspeed, was released in April 2004. The new expansion featured the addition of real-time space combat. This was continued in Rage of the Wookiees, and an additional expansion which added an additional planet for users to explore. Also, a new expansion, Trials of Obi-Wan, was released on November 1st, 2005, consisting of several new missions focusing on the Episode 3 planet Mustafar. While Star Wars Galaxies still remains a devoted following, it has also alienated many players. Star Wars Galaxy has chosen to ignore the timeline established in the original films, during which the game is set, and has allowed players to play as Jedi characters. The game has also undergone several major redesigns, which have been received with mixed reactions and players. Restructuring under Jim Ward. In April 2004, Jim Ward, VP of Marketing, Online, and Global Destructions at Lucasfilms, was appointed president of LucasArts. Ward performed a top-to-bottom audit of LucasArts infrastructure, describing the company's state as quite a mess. In 2003, LucasArts had reportedly grossed just over $100 million, according to NDP, primarily from its Star Wars titles, significantly less from the grosses from the year's top single titles such as Halo. Ward produced a 5-year investment plan to refit the company. Previous Star Wars games had been produced by external developers such as Raven Software, BioWare, and Obsidian. Ward now prioritizes making LucasArts' internal game development work effectively and adapt to the evolving game industry. Ward now prioritizes making LucasArts' internal game development work effectively and adapt to the evolving game industry. Star Wars Battlefront, Star Wars Republic Commando, and Star Wars Episode 3 survived cuts that closed down other development games and reduced staff from about 450 to 190 employees. Ward also canceled Star Wars Rogue Squadron Trilogy, which was 50% complete, and it was going to be released on the Xbox in 2004.
No way.
Factor 5 was going to develop a Rogue Squadron game titled Rogue Squadron X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter for the Xbox 360, but it was canceled by LucasArts. After Factor 5's exclusivity with Sony ended, they decided to release Rogue Squadron Trilogy for the Wii, but it was eventually cancelled as well. In 2004, LucasArts released Star Wars Battlefront based on the same formula as well as the popular Battlefield series of games. It ended up becoming the best-selling Star Wars game of all time to that point, aided by marketing tie-in with the original trilogy DVD release. Its sequel, Star Wars Battlefront 2, was released on November 1st, 2005, and featured new locals, such as Episode 3, Planets Mustafar, Magneto, etc. In addition to space, combat, playable Jedi, and new special units like Bothan spies and Imperial officers.
So dull.
Its sequel, Star Wars Battlefront, was released on November 1st, 2005, and featured new locals such as Episode 3, Planets Mustafar, Magneto, etc. In addition to space, with combat, playable Jedi, and new special units like Bothan spies and Imperial officers. In the same year, the second Knights of the Old Republic game was in production. LucasArts told Obsidian Entertainment that the project needed to be finished by that year's holiday season. Obsidian was forced to cut huge amounts of content from the game, resulting in a rushed, unfinished Knights of the Old Republic 2. In March 2005, LucasArts published the LEGO Star Wars, the video game, the first game in the popular LEGO video game franchise by Traveller's Tales. It was based on the Star Wars prequel trilogy. In May 2005, LucasArts released The Revenge of Sith, a third-person action game based on the film. Also in 2005, LucasArts released Star Wars Republic Commando and one of their few non-Star Wars games, Mechanierines, developed by Pandemic Studios. On February 16, 2006, LucasArts released Star Wars Empire at War, a real-time strategy game developed by Petroglyph. September 12, 2006 saw the release of LEGO Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, the sequel to the popular LEGO Star Wars game. The sequel to the popular LEGO Star Wars, the popular LEGO Star Wars, the video game. LEGO Star Wars 2, once again developed by Traveller's Tales and published by LucasArts, follows the same basic format as the first game, but as the name indicates covers the original Star Wars trilogy. A game titled Traxion was announced. Traxion was a rhythm game which was under development for PlayStation Portable by British developer Fuji Entertainment, scheduled to be released in Q4 2006 by LucasArts, but it was instead cancelled in January 2007. The game was to feature a number of mini-games and would support imported songs from the player's own MP3 library as well as the game's bundled collection. The game was to feature a number of mini-games and would support imported songs from the player's own MP3 library as well as the game's bundled collection. In May 2007, LucasArts announced Fracture and stated that the new intellectual properties serve as a vital role to the growth of LucasArts. Mechanierines, Playground of Destruction was labeled the #1 IP in 2005, and Thrillville the #1 of the new children's IP in 2006. Fracture was released on October 7, 2008 to average reviews. Mechanierines, Playground of Destruction was released on January 11, 2005 to critical and commercial successes, which led to a sequel, Mechanierines 2, World in Flames. Thrillville was released on November 21, 2006, and Thrillville Off the Rails was released in October 16, 2007. On September 16, 2008, Star Wars The Force Unleashed was released to mixed reviews, though it quickly became the fastest-selling Star Wars game of all time. The rapid scaling down of internal projects at LucasArts was also reflected in its handling of games developed by external developers. During the tenure of Ward, Free Radical was contracted to produce Star Wars Battlefront 3, which had been in production for 2 years. During the tenure of Ward, Free Radical was contracted to produce Star Wars Battlefront 3, which had been in production for 2 years. Free Radical co-founder Steve Ellis described how working with LucasArts evolved from being the best relationship we'd ever had with a publisher withholding money for 6 months and abusing the independent developer's position to withhold the full project cancellation fee. This was a major event which contributed towards free radical entering administration. Last year's as a part of an independent Lucasfilm, Ward left the company in early February 2008 for personal reasons. He was replaced by Howard Rothman, an interim president. Daryl Rodriguez, who came from Electronic Arts, took Rothman's place in April 2008. About a month prior to release of Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, LucasArts scaled down the internal development studio. The aforementioned game received a mediocre score from some media outlets such as IGN, GameSpot, and Game Trailers. After release, minor adjustment in staffing resulted in even more layoffs. The successor to Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Sith Lords in the form of the MMORPG Star Wars The Old Republic, was announced on October 21st, 2008 at an invitation-only press event. Developed by BioWare, it was released in December 2011. They also published Star Wars The Clone Wars Republic Heroes in 2009 for all current systems. The game is in a tie-in to the Clone Wars television series was released on October 6, 2009, receiving generally negative reviews. During television network G4's coverage of the 2006 E3 convention, a LucasArts executive was asked about the return of popular franchises such as Monkey Island. The executive responded that the company was currently focusing on new franchises and that the LucasArts may return to the classic franchises in 2015. Though it was unclear as whether the date was to put forward as an actual projection or hyperbole. This turned out to be a hyperbole as LucasArts and Telltale Games announced new adventure games in a joint press release in 2009. The games announced were Tales of Monkey Island, which was to be developed by Telltale, and a LucasArts developed enhanced remake of the 1990 title The Secret of Monkey Island, with the intent of bringing the old game back to a new audience. According to LucasArts, this announcement was just the start of LucasArts' new mission to revitalize its deep portfolio of beloved gaming franchises. Following the success of this, LucasArts released the sequel Monkey Island 2 Special Edition in the summer of 2010. Following the success of this, LucasArts released the sequel to Monkey Island 2 Special Edition in the summer of 2010. The company began experiencing turnovers and layoffs in 2010. Rodriguez left in May after just 2 years on the job. A Lucasfilm board of directors and a game industry veteran, Jerry Bowerman, filled in during the transition. Rodriguez was ultimately replaced in June by Paul Megan, formerly of Gears of War, developer Epic Games. In July 2010, Hayden Blackman, who served as creative director on the original Star Wars The Force Unleashed, LucasArts' most successful internally, produced the title of recent years, and the sequel unexpectedly left. However, the company scored a surprise coup in August 2010 when Clint Hawking, a high-profile game director from Ubisoft, announced that he would be joining LucasArts. His tenure at LucasArts was short-lived, however, as Hawking left LucasArts in June 2012, before the game he was working on was released. In September 2010, a third of the employees at LucasArts were fired. In March 2011, LucasArts published a sequel to the popular LEGO Star Wars series, LEGO Star Wars 3: The Clone Wars, based on the Clone Wars animated series, once again developed by Traveller's Tales. Sony Online Entertainment announced in June 2011 that Star Wars Galaxies would be shutting down at the end of 2011.
Star Wars
Its
Battlefront
services were
Entertainment
terminated on December 15, 2011. Another canceled title of LucasArts was a Darth Maul game, which was going to be developed by the same company which made the Wii version of The Force Unleashed 2. On April 26, 2011, LucasArts announced that it had acquired a license from Epic Games to develop a number of future titles using the Unreal Engine 3 for a number of platforms. Star Wars 1313, a proposed action-adventure about Boba Fett navigating Krosagan's subterranean underworld, was confirmed to use the Unreal Engine 3. However, the game was cancelled as a result of the closure of the development arm of LucasArts. In April 2012, LucasArts published Kinect Star Wars, developed by Terminal Reality for the Xbox 360. It was poorly reviewed by critics, receiving an aggregated score of 53.32% on Game Rankings and 55 out of 100 on Metacritic. In August 2012, Megan, who replaced Rodriguez as president in 2010, also left his position at LucasArts after just 2 years on the job. Kevin Parker and Gio Croce were named to co-lead the studio until the studio would choose a permanent president, with the former as interim head of business operations and the latter interim head of studio production. The last game released through LucasArts as a subsidiary of an independent Lucasfilm was Angry Birds Star Wars, a game that gave the Angry Bird characters costumes and abilities based on the original Star Wars trilogy. It was released on November 8, 2012, before the Disney acquisition of Lucasfilm was finalized. The game was developed and published by Rovio Entertainment and licensed by LucasArts. Accusation by Disney. On October 30th, 2012, LucasArts was acquired by the Walt Disney Company through the accusation of its parent company, Lucasfilm, in a deal for $4.5 billion. A Disney representative stated that it is an intent at the time was for all employees at Lucasfilm and its subsidiaries to remain at their present positions. A LucasArts representative said that for the time being, all projects, all business, and as usual. On December 4th, 2012, the accusation of Lucasfilm was approved by the Federal Trade Commission, allowing the deal to be finalized without dealing with antitrust problems. On December 21st, 2012, the deal was completed by Lucasfilm and all of its subsidiaries, who wholly owned Disney. Information that surfaced in March 2013 suggested that Star Wars games already in development, such as Star Wars 1313 and First Assault, may have been put on hold in order to put more focus on Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. At the time, LucasArts also had 3 untitled games in development: an open-world RPG, an FPS, and an aerial combat game. According to a job listing posted via the Lucasfilm website, LucasArts was also planning on curating a new online service which they claimed would revolutionize the industry. On April 3rd, 2013, Lucasfilm confirmed that LucasArts would cease to operate as a video game developer. Future video games based on its properties will either be developed by Disney Interactive Studios or licensed to third-party developers. As a result of its future internal projects were cancelled, and mostly of its staff were laid off from the company. However, LucasArts remained open with a skeleton staff of fewer than 10 employees, so it could retain its function as a video game licensor. Disney indicated that the new business model would minimize the company's risk while achieving a broad portfolio of quality Star Wars games. Around 150 staff members lost their jobs as a result of the closure. The layoffs at LucasArts also resulted in layoffs at fellow visual effects subsidiary Industrial Light and Magic, as many of LucasArts employees also worked for ILM. The company was left overstaffed after the accusation. On May 6, 2013, it was revealed that Electronic Arts would develop Star Wars games through an exclusive multi-year license for the core gaming market. But the agreement allowed Disney Interactive Studios to further develop the casual gaming market on mobile, social tablet, and online game categories, and LucasArts to further license the franchise. On July 15, 2013, a sequel to Angry Birds was based on the Star Wars prequel trilogy titled Angry Birds Star Wars 2 was announced. It was the first game released through LucasArts under the Disney ownership, and when it launched for mobile platforms on September 18, 2013. On October 4, 2013, Disney Interactive announced Star Wars Tiny Death Star, a Star Wars game for mobile devices on Tiny Tower. It was developed by Disney Mobile and Nimblebit, and was published by LucasArts for mobile devices on November 8, 2013. On December 17, 2013, Disney Interactive announced Star Wars Attack Squadrons, a Star Wars space combat simulation game developed by Area 52 Games in conjunction with Disney Mobile and LucasArts. A closed beta pro period began in North America on January 14, 2014. The first Star Wars game announced under Electronic Arts' exclusive license Star Wars Battlefront, a reboot of the Star Wars Battlefront series developed by DICE. The game was released in the third quarter of 2015. The second game by Electronic Arts under their Star Wars license was a free-to-play mobile game titled Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It was announced at the 2015 E3 Expo, where it was announced as a collectible card game RPG. The game received a soft launch in Australia during October 2015 and was formally released on November 24, 2015. On May 10, 2016, a sequel to the 2015 reboot of the Star Wars Battlefront series was announced, featuring content from the sequel trilogy of films. It was released on November 17, 2017. At the 2014 Electronic Entertainment Expo, Sony Computer Entertainment announced Grim Fandango Remastered, developed by Double Fine Productions, as a console exclusive for PlayStation platforms. It was released in 2015 for PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, Microsoft Windows, OS X, Linux, Android, and iOS. During Sony's new PlayStation Experience convention in 2014, another remaster by Double Fine, Day of the Fine Tentacle Remastered, was announced. It was released in March 2016 for PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, Microsoft Windows, OS X, Linux. At the 2015 PlayStation Experience, another remastered game by Double Fine was announced, Full Throttle Remastered. It was released in April 2017 for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, Microsoft Windows, OS X, and Linux. Impact on the San Francisco game development industry. Ex-LucasArts developers have founded numerous San Francisco game development studios, such as Double Fine Productions, 2000, Telltale Games, 2004, Monkey Fun, 2008, Dynamite, 2011, Soma Play, 2013, and Fifth Journey, 2015, playing a significant role in the continued development of the computer games in the Bay Area. And there's the history of LucasArts. So could it be game over for them? Well, after their accusation with Disney, I think this actually just could be the end of LucasArts. Anyways, I sure hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys happen to enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button, and also don't forget to subscribe. And until then, I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.